Alright guys, so today we're going to be talking about some really commonly used tools for software collaboration and managing software projects. And specifically the tools are Git and GitHub. So we're going to talk about what are these tools, how should we use it, why should we use it, and all that cool stuff. So to get started, what are these tools used for? Why should I care? So let's say you're working on a big software project and you want to collaborate with a lot of people, like more than two people. And you also want to keep track of what's going on with the code. So you're adding features, maybe your friends are adding features, and you want to be able to see all the junk that you're doing to the code, keep track of changes, keep track of who's doing what work and what work's being done. And so if you just wanted to keep track of versions, then Google Docs or Dropbox can let you do that. But none of those tools are really good for managing a big collaborative project, and that's where Git and GitHub come in. These allow you to have way more people working together on one project, and you can still keep track of what everyone's doing. Multiple people can even work on changing the same file, and you won't have a problem with that. So before we go deeper into how to use this and what these tools do, there's a distinction here. So I'm going to talk about Git and I'm going to talk about GitHub. And what you need to know is that Git is the actual software that handles version control and handles collaboration. You can run this anywhere. It's an application. GitHub, on the other hand, is a website or a web service. And behind the scenes, it's running Git. You can think of it as the social interface for collaboration that is made possible with Git. But basically what you need to know is it's an easy to use web interface platform that lets you easily do all the things that Git allows. So manage collaboration, store files, make changes, manage changes, and etc. So when we start, we're actually going to be starting with GitHub simply because it's easy to use, especially if you're not familiar with the command line. So let's take a look at GitHub right now and get started. Alright, so let's get started using the GitHub web interface and let's see how this works. So you're going to need an account. I already have one, but if you don't, just click sign up. It'll walk you through the process and it's pretty simple and straightforward. So I'm going to sign in with my existing account. Okay, so this is what I'm seeing when I log in. You won't have this because you probably don't have any repositories yet, but that's alright. We're going to add one. So I'm going to click here and go to My Repositories. And here I can see a list of all the stuff I've worked on, all my projects. And I'm going to click New. So let's just call this Fancy Demo. It's a very fancy demo. So from here, I'm going to initialize my repository with a README so I can work on it directly without having to worry about command line or setting up other stuff. So I'm going to click Create Repository right here. And yay, I have a repository now. And all that is a place to store files. And okay, so let's add some files. Right now, I can click Create New File. And I'm going to call it hello.txt. Keep it simple. And I'm going to add something here. And so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to commit my changes. And all that means is I'm going to save my work and the changes I've made at a certain point in time. And I'll be able to go back and look at that if I need to. So let me just say, created hello.txt, why not? So I'm going to commit this file, this change, and okay, cool. So if I click on hello.txt, it shows the changes, the lines I just added, and that's cool. If I go to commits, I click on this, and you might notice that there's this really long chain of letters and numbers, and you might be wondering what that means. Well, if you go look at the URL right here, you may notice that this and this are actually the same thing, and every single commit that you make or every save that you make has this unique hash, and you can use that to go back to a change that you made at a certain point in time. And this is an example of how you can like track work that you've done and changes you've made, as long as you keep saving, you keep committing whenever you're making these changes. In short, having all of these unique identifiers lets you browse your history, and you can find stuff at certain points of time really easily. So what else can I do through GitHub? Well, I can actually do quite a bit. So maybe, for example, I want to invite someone else to contribute to my project here. And how do I do that? Well, I can go to Settings and click on Manage Access over here. And as you can see, my repository is public, but I haven't given anyone direct access to be able to work on the stuff here, like to touch the code. And I can change that. Let me just click Invite a Collaborator, and you can add someone by name, email, or username. Let me try this. Ooh, okay. So I'm going to add someone to my repository, and now my other account, my testing account, just needs to accept my invite in order to work on this project. So I just invited my other account to collaborate on this repository. I'm going to accept this invitation, and from here, what it looks like is pretty much the same, but I can now also make changes. I can create files, I can upload files from this account as well, because I just added them as a collaborator. So now, one thing I can do is, maybe I'm looking through this and it looks really blank. I want to add some more stuff. So one thing I could do is I can make changes. For demo purposes, I'm going to try creating changes on another branch. So what that just means is, let's just say I make something called testing. I'm going to create a branch off master, which means like these different branches are all different versions of the code or of the project files that people are working on. And maybe you're adding new features, so you create your own version of the code, your own branch, and you make your changes there. And you can bring branches together, you can merge them, or you can just keep adding changes to them and they get more and more farther apart. But the thing is, when you make a branch and make changes to it, that allows you to be able to compare code, go back and look for differences when you're going to bring them back in. And maybe, for example, I see this and I want to add something to this file. It's really blank. So maybe I delete this and I say added some random junk, I deleted a line, and I added a few more. So, okay, I'm updating the code. Sure, I'm going to commit my changes, so I'm going to save them at this point in time. And, okay, so now, let's say I want to bring these changes that I just made into master, which is the sort of master copy that everything else is based off of, that is the sort of official version of the project. And if I want to see my changes get added to that and get accepted to bring together these two branches, then what I can do is I can open up a pull request. So conveniently, this big green button just popped up. Let me click it. It says, so we're gonna compare our code between these two versions and see if I can bring my code in to the master branch, to the sort of working version. And okay, yeah, I did upload hello.txt. I'm going to create my pull request. And okay, so I want to merge my one commit, my one saved change into the master branch from my testing branch. That's what I'm going to do here. So if I go back and I go back and I can look at my code, and I see, ooh, I have a pull request. What could be going on here? So now, back from my side, I can see that, hey, someone made a change and they want to bring this change in. I'll click there, and I can see their commit. Oh, okay, they got rid of one line, and they added 2 lines. Nice. So one thing I can do here is, you see these big blue plus signs that show up next to every single line? If I click on that, I can add a comment on just this line. So I'll say maybe like, why did you delete this? And okay, I can add a single comment, and this will also notify whoever wrote the code that, hey, someone has an issue or a question with what they just did. And they can add to this, and we can have a conversation, we can collaborate and keep working on stuff. So, okay, my other account just made some changes to this code or to this file, and I want to review them. Maybe I want to bring these changes in. I'm going to click on Review Changes here, go to, I can either just add a comment, or I can request changes, like, hey, this is something I saw, I don't like it, please make this change, and then I'll consider bringing it into what I'm working on. Or I can just approve and say, we're good to go, I can bring this in, and you don't need to do anything else, it looks fine. In this case, I'm just going to approve, because, sure, I'm fine with this, and say, okay. I submit my review, and cool, so I reviewed these changes, the changes were approved, and I can do a merge. So what that just means is I'm going to combine the work I have on my other branch into my main branch. So now, if I go back to the code, I see, ooh, 4 commits. I just merged the pull request, and the changes that I made on my other account got brought in. And they're part of the main version of the code now. If I open this, you see these new changes here, everything is well and good. What's next? Okay, so my pull request is merged. One other thing I can do is I can open up an issue. So maybe I'm looking at my code and there's something that still hasn't been fixed. There's still a weird bug, or something just doesn't look right, or I have a question, or I have a new feature that I want to add. Either way, I have some issue with the project, and what I can do is I can head on over to this extremely convenient Issues tab, and I'll click New Issue, and I don't know, maybe hello file looks really blank. These are extremely helpful and specific, but so I can submit this as an issue, and then when I go back to my code, I see, ooh, there's an issue here, and I can add a comment to this to continue the discussion, or if I think that, hey, this is actually not a problem, I can close the issue. But either way, this is a pretty nice way of being able to just bring up any concern you have, ask a question, or do any of that fun stuff. So all of this is well and good, but what if I want to work on this stuff in a way that doesn't require me opening up a file on the website and clicking this little pencil and making changes a few lines at a time, one file at a time? That's pretty inefficient, right? So maybe we can try cloning the entire repository so we can work on it from our machine and not do it through this website. So what I'm going to do then is I can click clone or download, and I'll see this super fancy URL. I'm going to copy it, or I can just click open in desktop. So I already have GitHub Desktop installed. If you don't, you should probably consider installing it. So it is a super great GUI client for Git, which, I mean, there's a lot of different options out there, but I just like this one because it's simple. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to click File, Clone Repository, and so this URL that I just copied, I'm going to paste it here and click Clone. Cool. So this just popped up. You can see that I'm in the fancy demo repository on the master branch. I'm going to fetch just to be safe, and what that does is it gets all of any changes that exist on the remote, where the remote means sort of the master version that's online that we're looking at, the one that's on the server. And let's just check. If I click show and explore, ooh, I have hello, the text file. I also have the readme file, and I also have this .git folder, which shows that, hey, I did successfully clone this repository and it exists on my machine now. So either way, I can make some changes now. If you've connected your code to Eclipse or another IDE, and if you don't know how to do that, you can refer to my other video which shows you how. Either way, if you have your code set up to use in an IDE with GitHub, you can work on it there and your changes will show up. If not, let me just try this as an example. I can open up this text editor and add a few lines. So maybe so I just made some changes, and ooh, I'm going to save my changes. And wow, it looks like the lines I just added also showed up here on GitHub desktop. That's cool. So I edited my file, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to commit these changes now. So it's the same thing that we just did on the website. We're going to mark or save our progress at this point in time by committing. And one more thing that we want to be aware of here, though, is we just marked it locally, but it doesn't exist on the website yet. So if I were to look at my commits here, I don't see the changes that I just made. For the changes that I just made to exist online, I gotta click push origin. And what that does is it brings whatever I have on my local machine that I'm working on here. It brings that to bring it into the sort of main version of the code that exists online. And you can see that, hey, I updated this text file. If I click on it, I can see the changes I just made, which is very cool, and I can comment on them if I need to. I can make a pull request if I needed to combine stuff from one branch and use it with stuff in another. And again, I can fetch origin. So one thing I can do too is if I click on history, I can see all the changes that were made to files in this repository, from my initial changes to the changes that my other account made, and etc. And I can continue working on stuff. I can open this into text editor and just add more changes, or make a pull request, collaborate, add more people, etc. So that's it. Like, for now, these are the real basics of how to use GitHub through both the website and through GitHub desktop. And I hope you found this helpful. Happy coding, and thank you for watching.